Hello, everyone. Welcome to Cheyenne's Forum. Today is January 30th, and right now the time is 1 at Pacific time. And here is our dear friend, Tom. Tom, welcome.
Thank you, Cheyenne. Glad to be here.
Yeah, so nice to see you. And Tom was a assistant director of FBI, and he worked in FBI for almost 30 years. And he right now he's joined me to explore the truth, to tell his opinion, his observation of what happening in our country. And we discuss a lot of different topics, and then just see what can we do to save our country. Oh, thank you so much, Tom.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Sure. So today we're talking about a very important uh, person, and his name is Soros. I know, like everyone knows this name, and lots of people don't like him. And we know that he was destroying our country so badly. The picture behind me is a very, very famous shopping center in downtown San Francisco. And right now, 75% of the store closed, and a lots of homeless and people from who knows where get into this building. And this is a good example of if you control the DA of the city, you control the whole city, you control their life in a bad way. There are many cities in America is under this similar circumstances, like New York, like Chicago, LA, you name it, the big cities, Seattle, Portland. We know that Soros has support these DA to intentionally destroy the order of the city. Many our audience and even some of my friends ask me, Tom, how Soros did that. We know he's very rich, very, very rich, but how? He can get into the system and control who can become a DA in a big city. So, step by step, how he did it. That's the question of today.
Okay, it's very simple. Money. And
Okay, how it works.
in his case, billions of dollars. And
Sure.
so what he has done, and it's actually a genius move on his part. Take your money, and when you're donating to political campaigns, yeah, you can give it to senators and congressmen and some to the president and other people. But the cornerstone for the I guess the success, let's say, of a given city or county is if you can stop prosecution of criminals, you can cripple the city. And
Yes.
that's what he did. He found candidates that promised that if he helped them get elected, which he did with his tons of money, he helped them get elected, then they promised they won't prosecute serious crime, or
Mm-hmm.
they'll change the rules so dramatically that it just makes it ineffective. So in a
Mm-hmm.
place like in San Francisco in specific, with your picture behind you, the decision was made, okay, if you go into a store and you steal whatever you want, as long as it was less than $1,000, you walked free. Didn't
Right.
matter. You could go free, keep what you wanted. And so the stores were helpless. The
Mm-hmm.
police then know that there's no point in arresting these people because they can't be prosecuted. They're going to be let right back on the street.
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting about that in the federal law, for instance, FBI, by rules of the Department of Justice, if the prosecutors say they're not going to prosecute, you're not allowed to investigate. You have to close the investigation. And then what we would do is we would write a letter
Mm-hmm.
to the U.S. Attorney's Office and say, this is to confirm that on such and such date, your assistant U.S. attorney, so and so,
Mm-hmm.
advised our special agent or special agent in charge, whatever the person was they talked to, that they, if we even solve this case, they will not prosecute. And if that's the case under federal rules of criminal justice, you have to stop investigating, period. You're no longer allowed to pursue the investigation if the prosecutors have already said. The letter that we would send is called a letter of declination, meaning they're going to decline to prosecute. And if they're going to decline, then you can't even investigate. The rules are you stop all investigation. Now, the prosecutors that we're talking about are district attorneys. They're local. They prosecute state crimes, but
Mhm.
those are the robberies, murders,
Mhm.
rape, assault, whatever, that when the prosecutors say they're not going to prosecute no matter what, then the police are stuck. They cannot pursue the case, pursue the investigation or the arrest of the subjects. And that's pretty much the rule everywhere in the country, state, federal, or local. If the prosecutors say they will not prosecute, that's the end of that case.
So they
And
have the final say.
yeah, they have the final say of whether the investigation continues. If
Oh.
the if the investigation does not continue, it's over. If it does continue, then they'll have the final say. They may say, which is often the case, well, if you get a little more evidence, maybe we'll prosecute. So you can go ahead and keep going for now. But at the end of the investigation, they may say, no, it's still not enough. We're not going to prosecute. And that's the end. The prosecutors have the final say. So if you're Soros and you put your hand-picked prosecutors in the
Mhm.
district attorney office,
Mhm.
you know who are not going to prosecute. They're going to
Right.
let everybody get away with everything, and
Mhm.
then you're ruining that city. So if you
Right.
take San Francisco as a prime example, the
Mhm.
nicest shopping area in the city,
Mhm.
I spent 3 years in San Francisco as the assistant in charge. I
Right.
didn't spend as much time in those stores as I might have liked to because we were busy.
Mhm.
But the stores like at Union Square, which is the
The
high
prime.
rent district of shopping in San Francisco,
Mhm.
many of those stores had to close up and leave town. They couldn't stay in business because of the amount of theft
Mhm.
going in, people stealing them blind. And then
Right.
you have grocery stores. You have the same thing with grocery stores. Now you have a lot of these grocery stores, they have glass windows or doors put over the shelves with padlocks on them. So when you go up and you want to, normally you want to shop at your own pace and look over some of the products, decide between one or another. Well, they're behind glass things. So now you've got to get a clerk to come over, unlock the padlock, hurry up and do that so they can lock it back up again. So those stores basically that have to operate that way have been going out of business. And it's not just San Francisco, but you take that to many areas of the country. In Chicago, my hometown, you have the area called Magnificent Mile. And
Mhm.
that's Michigan Avenue going from the downtown loop, where a
Mhm.
lot of businesses are and office buildings. And you go north on Michigan Avenue, you cross the Chicago River, and the next mile is all of these upscale stores and malls and shopping areas. It's called the Magnificent Mile.
Mhm.
Well, with all of these stores going out of business, not so magnificent anymore. And that's the plan. That's the successful plan of the Marxists to bring down the economy of the United States. And in this case, they selected one of the cornerstone areas, our criminal justice system. So
Oh,
once we don't have effective criminal justice, we don't have law and order, we
right.
don't have law enforcement, we
Right.
don't have economic protection. One of the things about our system, our capitalist system, and why it's been successful is because the law protects people signing contracts. So if you have a contract with someone or a group of another company or whatever, then they have to abide by the contract. That's what keeps the economy safe. If they
Mhm.
don't know that there's going to be enforcement of those rules, then they're
Right.
not going to either sign it
Right.
or not sign it in good faith, knowing they're not going to honor it. So we
Mhm.
have a situation now where one of a key area of our entire system, our entire economy, social system, governance is crippled because of the Soros prosecutors in some of the biggest cities in the country. Whether,
Sure.
whether it's, New York, and you see them going after Trump. You
Mhm.
see, you see they're all, Fulton County, Georgia, Manhattan DA office, Chicago DA, you
Mhm.
name it, LA and San Francisco, prime examples where there is no longer a rule of law
Sure,
governing the system. There's no longer faith in the rule of law. And
sure,
therefore, you're crippling police officers from being able to do their job.
sure. Well, thank you so much for the information, and it's just shocked people. All right, I have one big question or one small question. Let me put the small question first. So you said the DA has the final say.
Yeah.
They're gonna investigate the prosecutor, the case or not.
No,
If
the police are going to investigate,
the police
but
investigate,
the prosecutor has to prosecute,
yeah, right.
and
So,
nobody had you can't make them.
okay, so final saying meaning that even though we thought and we know that the DA was wrong, we can do nothing as
No,
a police or as a citizen.
no.
Can I just
No,
fire?
let's stop right there. You would think you'd like to have, at worst case, a citizen
Mhm.
could defend themselves. If they're being attacked, they could. And now you have a situation where these same prosecutors, they actually do prosecute some cases. They prosecute the victims. They prosecute the police officers trying to do their job. They don't prosecute the bad guys. They
Right.
prosecute the good guys. And then,
Well,
one of the things,
sue the DA if the DA just don't do the wrong thing. The
no,
police
you can't.
don't have the
No,
right.
they don't have to do the right thing. And you could sue them, but, you know, people have tried to sue them.
Right.
Didn't work, didn't help, didn't
Right.
make them do anything they didn't want to do. Now, you have had one or two removed. If you look at DeSantis in Florida, he had a prosecutor removed for not prosecuting. But normally, that's a difficult process to do that, to
Okay.
actually get one fired, to get
Oh,
them removed. And you've had the same thing in San Francisco, a couple of other cities, but it's largely not been successful.
I see. Okay, that's a small question. The big question is, can you just demonstrate for us how Soros uses money step by step that the DA?
Just give them funds so they can run for office and outspend their opponent. Now, normally the district attorneys in Chicago, in Cook County, Illinois, it's called the state's attorney's office. But either way, it's the prosecutor in the county of that city that prosecutes state crimes, not federal crimes. That's the
Right.
U.S. attorney's office.
Mm-hmm.
But the bulk of these criminal acts are state and local:
Mm-hmm.
murder, robbery, rape, that type of thing. So if you stop prosecution at the state level,
Mm-hmm.
state's attorney, district attorney, if you get them to just not prosecute, not do their job that they should do, then you shut the whole system down. Now, one of the things, district attorney, the people running for district attorney, historically, it's not doesn't take the amount of money to win that office like it takes to become a senator or a congressman, millions and millions of dollars. Obviously, the president, close to $1 billion in that campaign. But these are people that normally, since there's so little money normally spent in the campaign for district attorneys, and normally the ones that are going to win is what the machine is. So in most of these big cities, it's Democrats, the Democratic machine. If they get selected to be on the Democratic ballot, they're going to win. Now, their opponents, let's say Republicans or independents,
Mm-hmm.
their opponents don't typically have that kind of money because they never needed it. There was just not that much money, I mean, at stake in those elections. So now if you get a guy like Soros comes along and he gives a certain candidate millions, way more than any other opponent's going to come up with, they're going to win. They're already in the right party, which for the most part in these cities, is Democratic Party.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the people are going to vote if they're a Democrat, they're going to vote for Democrats and
Mm-hmm.
they're going to win. And the people aren't going to look at this and go, well, the Republicans are going to prosecute and the Democrats not going to prosecute and the city's going to go bankrupt and people are going to move out. People don't analyze it that closely. And then even if they get fooled, you would like to say, okay, they got fooled the first time,
Mm-hmm.
4 years ago, 8 years ago, by electing some of these corrupt district attorneys and state's attorneys. But
Mm-hmm.
then they do it again. And
Right.
that's been the problem. Now, why is that? I'm not quite sure how that many people can be that stupid over and over again. And that's the problem I have with this personally,
Mhm.
is that you would think they would be looking at it and going, if you're San Francisco and you look at Union Square, people
Mhm.
come from all over the state to
Mhm.
shop at Union Square to see the beautiful city. And it's one of the most beautiful cities in the world
Mhm.
being taken, downhill, homeless living in tents all through the financial district, all through these areas. And you would think the people would say, this used to be one of the most beautiful cities in the entire world.
Right.
And starting with Mayor Gavin, it's been downhill ever since. And
Mhm.
Gavin did such a great job as mayor of San Francisco, ruining that city,
Mhm.
bringing that city down, that
They
the
become
rest of the
governor.
people in California go, well, if he did that to San Francisco, we should let him do that to the whole state. He gets elected governor. Now you have a sanctuary state. The whole state is losing millions of dollars in income. And then
Mhm.
most recently, in the last couple of weeks, you have the main hospital in San Francisco, downtown San Francisco, is now having to treat so many migrants that it's going bankrupt. So here's a facility that for poor citizens, it's not going to be there to help them because it's there now to help the migrants. And they're
Mhm.
just going to bring it to the state of bankruptcy.
Sure.
So, and for Gavin, to look at it, and we're hearing his name now in the discussion for, Biden's not going to be able to make it to the election day. He's, becoming more feeble and
Mhm.
incoherent every day. So they're talking about, well, who should they replace Biden with at the 11th hour? This coming summer will be the Democratic National Convention in August. That's where they decide. All the electors come in and vote, and they'll decide that at that point, Biden can say, I want to spend more time at home, whatever, which is
Mhm.
hard to believe. He's already spending half of his time in Delaware at one of his three homes. So
Mhm.
you would think that'd be enough. But in any event, if he decides to bow out of the presidential race, then
Mhm.
he'll still be president until next January, a year from right now.
Mhm.
And then if they decide to put Gavin, you hear Gavin's name, Gavin
Mhm.
Newsom's name as the front runner to replace him.
Mhm.
Well, just think, what they're telling the country, that
Right.
you were stupid enough in San Francisco to hire this guy, stupid enough in the whole state of California. Well, we think you're stupid enough to make him president. Let's put him on, let's nominate him and have him on the ballot to be president of the United States. Perfect.
Well,
You have
maybe
the
they
perfect
compare.
Marxist candidate to try to run the country. And the question will be, how many people will agree to that? How
Mhm.
many people still support Biden, and
Mhm.
how much he's ruined the country and all the bad decisions he's made? Now,
Mhm.
I've commented a couple of times on my other podcast,
Mhm.
Operation Truth, and on that one, I've said, Joe Biden, he's one of the best leaders we've ever had. He
Mhm.
really is.
Right.
Because if you look at the condition of the United States economy,
Mhm.
other issues, are standing in the world, no wars, everything that was going on when the
Mhm.
Trump presidency ended. And in 3 years, exactly almost to the day now, in 3 years, look at how Biden has led this country downhill
Right.
faster than anybody else. Now, when they do the surveys, it's
Mhm.
a contest. Well, is Biden a worse president than Jimmy Carter? And now
Mhm.
more people are saying, yeah, he is, because different things were going on with the Carter administration and what he inherited when he became. But when you look at what Biden inherited from Trump, secure borders, the economy, the low inflation, low cost of living, low price of fuel, all of these things. And Biden has managed in every sector of our economy to make it way worse in
Mhm.
exactly 3 years. So,
Mhm.
so he's a leader. He's a tremendous leader. If you want, the United States to go downhill and
Exactly.
be run by Marxists, and a possibility of more Marxists coming in, after him, perfect. He's a great leader.
Yeah, exactly. So when you're talking about the Soros give the money to the campaign, I remember some of our audience and asking if there is a limitation, a limit of how much you can donate.
Yeah, there is, but they have all these packs and maneuvers, so they give it
It's
to
an
other
organization,
other
right?
Yeah, they give it to other people and other organizations to make the donation, but collectively, he's
Oh,
putting in that kind of money.
okay.
And
So,
now he's, being reported to be semi-retired, that his son, who's I think about 40 years old, is going to
mhm,
take over. Now,
right.
I've heard him speak, and
More aggressive.
yeah, but he's also, he's from that school of public speaking. I
Hmm.
think Biden would normally be the chairman of that school
Hmm.
of saying things and being incoherent. If
Hmm.
you watched Soros's son spoke at the World Economic Forum
Hmm.
2, 3 weeks ago, and I listened to that speech, and at the end of it, it's like, what did he say? You know, kind of like, when Biden finishes speaking, when Kamala Harris finished speaking, now this guy, when he finishes, you don't know what they said.
Yeah, that's the
You
thing.
only know that it wasn't going to be good for the country. That much you could guess.
That's I have the same feeling about their speech. And then well, you heard the name Michelle Obama? Of
Oh
course.
yeah,
You do,
yeah.
yeah. And some people said she probably become a candidate
She
of.
might. That's hard to say because what they can do is at the Democratic National Convention in August.
Mhm.
Again, that would be the time where they're not going to take Biden. The Democrats are going to support Biden as long as he stays a candidate. But Biden could easily, at that point, say,
Nine,
"Whatever, my
right,
health, or whatever. I want more time to walk along the beach with Jill, and I can't handle all these. This workload is killing me, and it's just hard to adjust those lawn chairs on the beach and everything. I need to resign.
right.
I'm not going to run for office. Now,
So
if
who
that happens,
mhm,
the reason they bring up Michelle's name is that many, many experts in politics, the pundits, as expert as they may be, have said that the base of the Democratic Party are Black women. And even though Kamala Harris, you can argue how Black she is, what percentage, and, the different blood that's in her system, who knows? But the idea is they can't easily remove, not remove, but replace Biden with Gavin Newsom, white male. So
mhm,
this way, Michelle Obama, and they don't want Kamala Harris because pretty much she's an idiot.
mhm,
So if you want to replace Joe Biden, you're going to have to look at possibly a black female, and there are plenty of good ones out there that
right.
could be a candidate, but they're not as well known as Michelle Obama. And so that's the idea that Michelle Obama commands a national recognition of her name, and that she might be the one that could take over for Biden and then kind of move Kamala Harris to the side, but not make it look so evil because she's a black woman herself. So that's a possibility. I don't know. This is going to be the old Chinese saying, "May you live in interesting times,"
Yeah,
is going to really apply to the United States from now till November.
right.
Very, very interesting times of what's going to happen with these primaries, with issues like that. Another thing, this past week, the Republican National Committee offered to Trump,
Right.
you
Yeah,
don't
that's
need to, you don't need to compete in any more primaries. We're going to name you the candidate, period. Right? We're going to anoint you the Republican National Committee Republican candidate for president. Trump said, no, 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 thanks.
let's do it
Which
over
is
with.
smart, which is smart on his part. If you look at every primary, look at we've had two, what, Iowa and New Hampshire.
Mhm.
Trump then goes to that state or that territory almost every single night and holds a rally and is trying to rally that group in that state or in that jurisdiction that, yeah, tomorrow vote in the primary or vote in the caucus, and I want to win the caucus, but get them fired up to vote in November when it really counts. And
Mhm.
so if you take away primaries and say, that's it, you're the guy, now what, it's going
Mhm.
to be hard to get enthusiasm for people to go to his rallies if
Right.
he's really not competing in that state on the
Mhm.
ballot. Now,
Mhm.
right now, there are some that say, they would really like Nikki Haley to stay in the campaign so that Trump has somebody to go up against in each of these primaries and hold his rallies. But if you remember, in the first year or two after Trump became president, he still held rallies.
Oh
He was
yeah.
our president.
Hmm.
So in this situation, would you get coverage of them? He's already not getting, Newsmax covers, maybe one of the rallies during a week leading up to like New Hampshire or Iowa.
Hmm.
Otherwise, you have to go to an internet channel to see like RSBN and some of the other ones that have every rally on the internet.
Hmm.
But if he accepted that and said, "Oh yeah, anoint me the candidate," then the enthusiasm to go to a rally will be less. The media coverage will be less or non-existent. Even the internet aspects. So so that's a smart move on his part of saying, "No, no, no. I want to campaign. I want to still be able to campaign all the way through summer."
Right. You got a good point here. Yeah, he's very smart. He knows what he's gonna do. So, still, I'm thinking about Soros, and do you think that in our system, do we have any possibility to make some adjustment in order to prevent the things like this happen again, like the Soros money influence?
Well, right now, the way the system is set up, it just takes more money to beat his money. So that's the problem. And the other thing is that right now, any reform that would be needed would be blocked by the Democratic Party anyway.
Yeah,
So
that's
that's where the problem comes in. Look at the trouble the Republican Party is having with the articles of impeachment for, not even Joe Biden, starting with, Secretary of Homeland Security, Mayorkas. They're having trouble getting Democrats to go along with that. Now, when you hear Mayorkas or watch and hear him testify in congressional hearings under oath, he is lying through his teeth,
I know. I,
obviously lying, no question about it, lying. So
Mhm.
you've had congressional committees refer him to the Department of Justice because normally you would say if you lie before Congress under oath, it's a felony, it's a federal crime.
Right,
Department of Justice can prosecute it.
right.
Well, who owns the Department of Justice? Another crooked politician, Merrick Garland. All of them led by the biggest crook, Biden. So you have this system now of all of these guys that are almost have immunity from prosecution because the Democrats protect them completely. And when you see Jamie Comer, committee chair, come in and have meetings with the press and show the receipts that they have from banks showing the millions of dollars in transfers to the Bidens, to one of their LLCs, and then it moves all around and then ends up in either Joe's pocket, Hunter's pocket, his brother, his children, his grandchildren. We're all
Right.
making millions of dollars. And then what do you hear? Uh, you hear congressmen that are Democrats get up and say, "Oh no, that doesn't prove that Joe's crooked." What? What? You know, and I've talked about that 20, 30 years from now, you're going to have classes in colleges having courses for criminal justice courses, or in police academies, FBI, state and local, that are going to say, okay, today's lecture, we're going to talk about the harmful effects of public corruption, why it's an important violation that all of us have to investigate at our level. And they'll be using Joe Biden. He'll be the cover story on that lecture will be Joe
Joe
Biden,
Biden's family.
because we haven't had anybody elevate this level of corruption to this level where it's millions of dollars from China,
Mhm.
millions of dollars from the Ukraine,
Mhm.
from other countries, including the wife of the mayor of Moscow, money getting sent to the Bidens. So, and then the policy, the payback for these millions of dollars is he's lessened a number of programs that go after Chinese companies penetrating our system, stealing our high technology, intellectual property, all of that. He's lessened the aggressiveness of the Department of Justice going after China stealing our technology.
Mhm.
Then Ukraine, you have, and I've said this is my opinion, that when Zelensky says, I need another $60 million or 60 billion or whatever it is, then Joe Biden, he's out there trying to get whatever he asks for,
Mhm.
because who is the guy that could provide the most evidence to actually have Biden removed, impeached, convicted, put in jail for bribery? But the Ukrainians,
Right.
the government, Burisma leaders, Zelensky, the guy before Zelensky, that they have all of these requests for the fortune that has been sent to Ukraine is because they have Joe Biden by the throat with
Right.
the amount of corruption that he's accepted from them.
Right.
And that's why he has to do whatever they want. He's like their puppet.
Mhm.
People have asked me, well, how long is this going to continue with Biden sending this amount of money to the Ukraine? I said, as long as he's in office and as long as the Ukrainians, they have the tape recordings of phone conversations with Joe Biden and Hunter Biden where they discuss the corruption, how to pay it, what it's for, all of that. It's huge corruption, and there's huge amount of evidence. And
Mhm.
right now, you have all of these leaders on the Democratic side. I don't see any evidence. What are you talking about? Right in front of
So,
their face. There's no
so
evidence.
if Biden and his family is criminal, the Democrats are criminal too because they help him cover their illegal events
Exactly right.
from
Exactly.
day one. So they
Yeah.
are all criminal.
Yeah.
So the situation is the reality is the criminals are the leaders of the country. So that's the thing. So
Uh,
the,
as of right now, yes.
right, right.
Yep.
So how can we get back of the country? How can we get back of our like normal life, normal justice system, normal government? How can we
Well,
do?
at the very minimum, we have to take back the White House. We have to take back the House of Representatives, take back the U.S. Senate, take back district attorney and prosecutors' offices throughout the country at the county level, at the state level, take back governors' offices. All of that has to come back. It has to come back. And it's almost like this might be the last chance. Now, you hear this every election. This one's so important. If we don't do it now, we're going to lose the country. Well, I think right now we're pretty close to losing it
Right.
because the Democrats are going to become more aggressive to putting in systems that'll be almost impossible to overtake. For example, they started out a couple of years ago saying, we want to make the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico states,
Mhm.
knowing that they vote 95% Democrat. So that means if two senators in a district, two senators in Puerto Rico would become Democrats for life, 4 spots. Now, right now, what's the lead of the Democrats in the Senate right now? If they had 4 spots that are always going to be Democrat, there's no more discussion.
Mhm.
So that's one issue. The second issue, you hear him talking about packing the court.
Right.
And, and that would be really important because instead of nine, right now, the Constitution does not specify the number of Supreme Court justices.
Mhm.
It only says that we will have a Supreme Court and that when they make a ruling, it will be the majority of the Supreme Court.
Mhm.
So if this came up with President Roosevelt in the 1930s because he was having enacted a number of bills that were part of the New Deal.
Mhm.
So Social Security, many bills that the Supreme Court was threatening to say that's unconstitutional. We're not gonna allow that bill to become law. And and what Roosevelt did was say, okay, because he was very popular at that point, okay, we're going to pack the court. So instead of 9 justices, let's have 20. And the next, or 21. And all of the next ones, I, as president, get to nominate them. And then the Senate will have hearings and confirm them. And then it'll go to the Judiciary Committee. Then it will go to the whole Senate and they'll vote them in. So now we won't have 9 justices, we'll have 19, let's say. And they'll be justices that Roosevelt would have appointed. And
Mhm.
at that point, every decision is going to be very liberal, very progressive, and back up all of the agencies that Roosevelt's trying to create. Now, what ended up happening historically was that the mere threat of doing that was enough. Then all of a sudden, the Supreme Court started backing him up. They didn't throw out Social Security or, some of these issues that he was creating. They just passed that. Okay, okay, you can have that because we'll let you have whatever you want. Don't mess with that. We have 9 people. Don't change that.
Well, some people, well, thank you so much for sharing that information. And then some people just said the Democrat are have like two parts in history. The first part we called old Democrats. They are not bad. They're okay, not too bad, because at the end of the policy is want American to be better. Okay, so the old Democrats and Republic are different, but their main purpose, the main goal is the
Yeah, but
same.
this depends on when you're talking about.
Right. So that's the
Because the
question.
Democratic Party in the mid 1800s was the party of slavery.
Mm-hmm,
Lincoln is the first Republican,
mm-hmm,
and he's anti-slavery, and later, obviously leads the country in the Civil War and all that. But the Democrats were pro-slavery.
mm-hmm,
After the Civil War, the Democrats were pro, the Jim Crow laws, that there would be segregation, that you would see the signs even now, the historical signs over a drinking fountain,
mm-hmm.
white only,
Right,
and then a different drinking fountain, colored only,
right,
or the
right.
bathrooms, or the waiting rooms in train and bus stations, all of that. That was all Democratic Party. And you had that go through the party of the KKK,
Mm-hmm,
Democratic Party.
mm-hmm,
Then Woodrow Wilson, as a matter of fact, leading Democrat, he actually reinstituted segregation in the U.S. federal government. The U.S. government had already been integrated.
mm-hmm.
Wilson comes in and says, no, 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 we can't have that. We don't want blacks side by side with whites. So he put segregation back into effect. And, so this went on, and we had the Democrats fighting civil rights legislation all along, even into the 60s,
Mm-hmm.
even into more recent times. So it was really the Democratic Party was anti-equality, anti-integration, anti-equal rights for blacks,
Mm-hmm.
very strongly
Mm-hmm.
voted that way.
Sure. And the very interesting thing is the most of the first generation immigrant are support Democrats. Can you tell why?
Well, when the first generations, when they got off the boat, if they were in New York and went through Ellis Island, they may not know anybody in the city, or they may, but they went into poorer neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't live in the suburbs and all that. So they're in poor neighborhoods, whether it was an Italian neighborhood or an Irish, or, you know, one of the countries Italian, one of the countries from Europe. And then on the West Coast, you had the same thing with immigrants coming in from China mainly. In San Francisco, large numbers came in to help build the railroads.
Right.
So they were building the railroads that were eventually connected the West Coast and the East Coast cross country. Many
Mm-hmm.
of those workers were Chinese
Mm-hmm.
and came in through San Francisco. So that because they were coming into these poor areas, then they were prone to being recruited to be Democrats, frankly. So the
Okay.
poor neighbor, to this day, you have that.
Mm-hmm.
The poorer neighborhoods, the big cities, the poor neighborhoods in the big cities typically are Democrat.
Right.
And
Right.
that goes back, 100 years, but that's what we have right
Mm-hmm.
now.
So the Democrats is more like a Marxism. So one is
Exactly. Oh, yeah, exactly.
Marxism, or from the beginning they're Marxism.
Yeah. Yeah. If you
What?
look at the, the writings of Karl Marx
Mm-hmm.
and some of the people that also began teaching what he was teaching,
Mm-hmm.
um, it was really directed at poorer people.
Mm-hmm.
That, again, it's kind of like what we see now with Soros, that the best way for you to get ahead is if we bring people that have money, people that are running the country, bring them down to
Mm-hmm.
your level. So, That's what you kind of hear. You hear that now with uh, Democrats that are advocating, I don't know, redistribution of income or
Mhm.
advocating payback for reparations, payback for having been slaves and how they came in and all that. So
Mhm.
yeah, you have the strong evidence of that.
Mhm.
Scholars, I remember seeing one scholar talking about after the Civil War, basically made the statement that nobody in the Republican Party, this is now mid 1800s,
Mhm.
nobody in the Republican Party owned a slave. And a professor thought, oh, we've got him.
Mhm.
Ulysses S. Grant owned a slave. Well, the fact was he didn't own the slave. His wife was given it by a relative,
Mhm.
uh, gave it to her as when he died or something, and they immediately got rid of it. So Grant and his wife technically owned a slave
Mhm.
for a short time, given to them, and they hurried up and gave
Gotcha.
that slave his freedom.
Mhm.
That's the only Republican. All the other slaves were owned by Democrats. And
Mhm.
the issue that's come up lately with President Trump,
Mhm.
and they're wanting to take him off the ballot as an insurrectionist,
Right.
that goes back to
Those.
the 14th Amendment was passed 3 years after the end of the Civil War,
Right.
1868.
Right.
And what it said was one of the clauses of it, and interesting, the 14th Amendment was nicknamed the Due Process Amendment because
Right.
it basically says everybody, the first 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights, are very important and everybody, gets those equally.
Right.
So, but anyway, the third section of 14th Amendment says if you uh, fought an insurrection or rebellion against the United States, you cannot run for national office, cannot
Mhm.
be a senator, cannot be a member of Congress, and they
Right.
presume can't be president.
Mhm.
So that's where that came from. And
Mhm.
at the time, the reason was that many of these generals from the Confederate Army,
Mhm.
the ones that survived, went back to the South after the war, and they were very popular.
Mhm.
Robert E. Lee went back, becomes a professor became Washington Lee University.
Mhm.
I'm trying to think, James Longstreet, for example, very popular Civil War general.
Mhm.
Pickett, a number of these generals easily could have gone back to their states in the South
Mhm.
and run for office and won and
Mhm.
become United States senators, United States congressmen. No problem. They were still very popular. So that amendment was designed to keep them from becoming national, senators or congressmen. And
Mhm.
now they're trying to use that with Trump, as you see in Oregon and a couple of the states have taken him off the ballot, saying, well, he led the January 6th insurrection, which is, completely nonsense. But right now they'll do anything they can to try to keep him off the ballots, keep him from getting reelected. But
Right.
again, that whole issue, all of these guys that went back after the Civil War to the South,
Mhm.
Democrats, all,
Mhm.
all of the, people being elected in the South,
Mhm.
the ones that didn't run, didn't fight against the Union were getting elected.
Mhm.
But this main thing was to keep the very most popular, like Robert E. Lee,
Mhm.
like James Longstreet, like some of the other generals from the South, to keep them from becoming national
Right.
politicians
Right.
and be elected at a national level. That's
Right.
what that was designed for. And now you see that, again, the Democrats grabbing at anything they can come up with, trying to use that to say, oh, Trump can't. He was an insurrectionist.
So Democrats is not becoming a Marxism today. It's long time ago. They're like Marxism party.
Yeah, starting actually about 100 years ago.
Wow.
Because Woodrow Wilson, classic example, Democrat, he becomes president.
Mhm.
He was gradually trying to put in these Marxist
Mhm.
policies,
Mhm.
and that goes back to when he was elected at the time of the First World War,
Mhm. Mhm.
1917, 1918, in that time frame.
It's a long battle. All
Yeah.
right, let's see some our audience feedback. One of our audience is in Cuba and say hi to us.
Hello, hola.
That's thank you so much. And then Holland said, "Thank you so much, Tom. and she's worried about Soros gonna buy some, pay some killer to kill, murdered President Trump,
You
and
know,
said if Soros pay enough money, someone will do it.
we're all worried about that.
Right, right. And the other thing, okay, Yui said, "Where is the power of justice? I really can't understand today's America." So she's wonder where is the power of justice. I think she mentioned when we talk about the DA. The DA have to
No, you
fight.
start, well, justice at every level has been corrupted. I mean, you could start at the DA at the bottom and work your way up, or you could start with the president, obviously, and then Merrick Garland, the head of the Justice Department, and you see the double standard there and
Mhm,
how he's using the FBI and other federal law enforcement as weapons. Now,
mhm,
you look at, here's a classic recent example.
mhm.
Peter Navarro just got sentenced to 4 months in prison
Right,
last week, I believe.
right.
Now, he was sentenced because, and this is something this is interesting. Go back to he gets subpoenaed to testify before the January 6th committee.
Right.
He doesn't say I'll never testify. He says I was a close advisor to the president.
Mhm,
And that means that the president can decide whether I testify or not, which is true. And in the past, what would happen is that there would be a hearing in the court system to look at is
mhm,
he a close enough advisor to the president that he would be exempt from
mhm,
testifying as a confidant of the president.
mhm.
That was basically the rule. Well, the Democrats skipped all that. They didn't go to court. They just said, you come in and testify or you're going to jail. And so that's what they did. So now he goes through the process. He gets sentenced to 4 months.
Mhm.
Now, how different is that than what Hunter Biden did
Right,
when he's subpoenaed?
right.
You don't see him getting grabbed up and put in jail for not testifying. You don't see some of these other people,
Right.
or if they testify lying. How
Mhm.
many times have we seen Merrick Garland lie? Mayorkas just lie through his teeth.
They don't care.
They all lie. They all testify and they lie in obvious lies
Right,
that are
right.
easily demonstrated to be lies.
Mhm,
Any of them accountable? No. So you have this double system of if you're a Democrat, you can do what you want. If you're a Republican, you're going to go to jail.
mhm, mhm,
Now, Trump, if you remember back during the Trump administration, which now seems like 50 years ago,
mhm,
but if you look back at that, guys that were convicted that were his advisors,
mhm,
he pardoned them to get
mhm,
them out.
mhm,
So you don't have that now. You have all of these. Who's there to pardon them? Nobody. So, and the Democrats don't get prosecuted, so they don't need to be pardoned. The
mhm.
only Democrat that's going to need to be pardoned is going to be Biden's going to pardon his son and his family
Oh
for
yeah, right.
having accepted all the money from
Mhm,
China and from Ukraine and other governments.
mhm,
So that's the only hope, but you're not going to see that.
mhm. So it seems like what we can do is to vote, not vote Democrats. That's all I think we can do.
That's
First,
this is, yeah, my opinion, my
right,
recommendation.
right,
And you
right.
won't hear this anyway. I don't care if there's a Democrat running for dog catcher in your area, do not elect him because he'll go from dog catcher to, a state representative, then a state senator, and the next thing you know is United States senator.
Mhm,
You have to, I think, nip it in the bud. Do
mhm,
not, do not put any Democrat in any office because what you see happening now, you see this when they have the discussions of impeaching the president or impeaching anybody like Mayorkas, is you
mhm,
have all of the Democrats like a herd of rats. Oh
mhm,
no, we support him 100%. So
mhm.
we can't have that kind of solidarity among Democrats protecting other Democrats. Now, a little history, you go back to President Nixon in the
Mhm,
early 1970s, and he wins by landslide election. But anyway, Nixon's in the White House,
mhm,
and he gets involved and accused of covering up Watergate, not ordering the break in. Now, Watergate is the office hotel complex in Washington, D.C., where the Democratic National Committee had their offices. So
right.
the idea is that these guys, nicknamed the plumbers, would go break into that office and steal Democratic documents to help the election of Nixon. And then they get caught. So it doesn't help. Nixon doesn't get accused or proof that he ordered it or that he was knowledgeable of it. He's accused of covering up, obstructing justice to try to protect these guys after the fact. And what happens is here you have Nixon elected by a landslide at the Congress level. The head of the leader of the senators is Barry Goldwater. Barry Goldwater was a candidate for president in 1964, right after the assassination of President Kennedy. Goldwater runs against Lyndon Johnson. Johnson wins the presidency. So now, later on, you have Goldwater is still in the Senate. And the country is becoming increasingly aware of the obstruction that Richard Nixon had done. Now, here's Goldwater, and he takes a group of Republican senators to the White House to meet with Nixon. He doesn't say, there's no proof. They don't know what they're talking about. This can't be true. No. He goes to the White House and tells Nixon, we're going to convict you. They're going to impeach you, file the articles of impeachment, and we Republicans are going to find you guilty and you'll be removed from office. Therefore, you better resign. And that's what happens. So because Republicans were going to basically convict Nixon, fellow Republicans, Nixon goes ahead and resigns. Well, you don't hear any Democrat talking like that now with Joe Biden. You don't have congressmen like Jamie Raskin from Maryland, practically pure evil, talking about, oh, no, Biden's completely in it. They have no proof. There's no receipts. There's no documents. They have more than enough to convict him 10 times over if it was a federal court case. You have the rest of them, Schumer in the Senate, the rest of the Democrats, and that's part of the reason why the Republicans didn't want to bring articles of impeachment against Biden, was because they couldn't get 67. In the Senate, it would take 67 votes to convict him and remove him. Right. Well, they know, first of all, they couldn't get all the Democrats, which would be a minimum they would need, and then there'd be enough rhinos, Republicans, that they wouldn't get. So that's why. And then secondly, even if they thought they had a chance to be successful, then you end up with Kamala Harris. What an another great decision on the part of Biden was picking her for vice president. Because right now, as terrible as his polling is, she's worse. So as difficult as he has putting a sentence together, and he's, 80 years old, he can't put two sentences together. She's young, and she can't put one sentence together. So therefore, that's almost guaranteed immunity for Biden. Better leave him in office because she's a complete moron. We can't have her run the country. So that's where we're at. We're stuck with Biden, I think, for 12 more months. And because the Democrats aren't going to, no matter what he did, they're not going to convict him and remove him. And then if they did, we wouldn't want him removed right now anyway. Now, I think it's going to come soon enough that he's probably going to withdraw, but probably not until closer to the election.
Sure.
And don't forget, he still needs to be president to pardon all of his family members.
Right.
So that's another reason to not leave right away.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Tom. And I have lots of takeaway from today's conversation. And then I think the best three is first, don't vote Democrats. That's the thing. That's the key, right? And second is we need to take back White House, Congress, Senate, and the justice system. It's a long battle. It's a long battle. And the third is probably in our time right now is the worst time in the U.S. history. I think it maybe is worse than Civil War. Or
it's hard to tell. We've been through so many worse times in a way. Civil War being classic at the time. The Civil War. The first shots of the Civil War. Lincoln gets elected, barely. And did you know a number of southern states would not put him on the ballot? So he wasn't on the ballot in the South in some places. But anyway, he manages to win. And what happens is that you have a military academy in Charleston, South Carolina, and the cadets at this academy decide to launch an attack on Fort Sumter, which is a Union fort sitting in the harbor of Charleston. And now it's a museum. You can go there now and visit it. But anyway, that starts the war. And that just was because Lincoln got elected. Nothing had happened yet. So after that happens, then you have Lincoln saying, okay, we can't have this. He's going to send troops, Union troops, into the South to put down the rebellions. And then that's what starts all of the southern states pull out of the Union. They secede, form the Confederate States of the United States, and or not the United States, the Confederacy. And then you have a number of generals like Robert E. Lee. Robert E. Lee was offered to be the head of the Union Army.
Right.
And he refused. He said, I can't go against my state of Virginia. So he went back, stayed in Virginia, and became the leader of the Confederate Army of Northern Virginia. But in any event, that was a pretty terrible time. And in that case, in some of the battles, like Gettysburg, for example, in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, and that's not far. That's only about an hour and a half drive, actually, from where I live in the Washington, D.C. suburbs. And I go there about twice or three times a year to learn more about the history of that battle. But in any case, at the Battle of Culp Hill, you had two brothers on both sides, and they end up dead. They're in the same family fighting against each other. So that's part, so we haven't gotten to the point yet where we have fellow Americans killing each other, especially being on opposite ends of it. But, we could get there, is the point. We could end up degenerating into that level of violence and that level of distrust of the government. Because when you have people misuse the power of the government in blatantly obvious ways, that degrades the whole thing. And the idea of Colorado and a couple of other states saying that Trump led an insurrection, therefore the 14th Amendment prevents him from running for office, it's just not true. No. First part's not true. He didn't lead an insurrection. And all the evidence that he offered guardsmen and everything else, and they refused. Pelosi and the mayor Bowser of D.C. refused the National Guard assistance or other assistance. So, that idea that they picked the word, by the way, insurrection on purpose to say, because that's the word in the 14th Amendment.
Sure.
It says insurrection or rebellion. And you would think that would mean carrying guns and explosives and cannons and trying to defeat the country, defeat the army of the United States. You don't have any of that. But it's enough for these idiots in Colorado, all the way up to their Supreme Court, that they're so partisan that they decide Trump can't be on the ballot. And they don't hold hearings. Trump can't even testify, can't even present evidence that he did not lead the so-called insurrection. But they pick the word insurrection because that's the exact word in the 14th Amendment. Now, the irony is the 14th Amendment, the nickname, when I learned about as a young student and taking constitutional law classes in college, that the other nickname for this amendment is the Due Process Amendment.
Right.
Here you have, Trump doesn't get due process, but it's the amendment that's supposed to guarantee due process from the other amendments up to that point, especially the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments, which are the most important. So this kind of misuse of power, abuse of power, everything they claim Trump abused power, they're abusing it 10 times worse, and it's dangerous. It's very dangerous to the country that they would do that just for selfish political aims.
Right. Well, so we are definitely at a turning point of this country. So this year, 2024, is critical. So everyone needs to do our part and do the right thing.
Yeah. And remember what I said, even starting at the dog catcher level in your town.
Do that.
No Democrats.
All right. Well, thank you so very much. This is so important. And then I really appreciate your wisdom and your saying. You're just tell us the truth and what do you think and what do you saw throughout the history of our country. And then, yeah, we'll do together. We'll do together. And I'll do the Chinese version later, and I'll text you the
Okay.
all right. Well, thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Cheyenne.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
then I'll see you next week.
See you next week.